Okay, my dears, how are you doing? Welcome to this new class and stuff. I wanted to pay attention to what you're observing in video in this moment, which is the goal for today. I can describe carbon as an essential element for life. If you think about how carbon is a part of our life, as we studied before in the parts of the atmosphere and things like that, well, carbon is really important. One of the most important components when mixed with oxygen creates this carbon dioxide, which is one of the most important gases around the world. If you think about it, as you can see in this moment on the screen, you're observing carbon, which is that was extracted from the periodic table, the atomic number for carbon is 6, and the mass or the molar mass is 12 grams, meaning that grams in 1 mole of carbons. If you think about it, so for the next part I want you to observe, think about this amazing and beautiful cycle. All of this shows the proportions of carbon dioxide in gigatons. Remember the scientific notation, hexapeta, mega, kilos, so on, so on, so on, so on. So if you think about it, gigatons, toneladas, gigatoneladas, see what I mean? It's a lot. So if you pay attention to this part, what I wanted to think and take into consideration how carbon cycles first, right? If you think about this, I want to, yes, how carbon cycles into this point, right? Specifically, if you observe how, for example, right, carbon in plants and animal tissues and so on, the atmospheric carbon dioxide in here, which is having 100 gigatons and stuff like that. If you observe the, for example, this portion, the combustion of this of fossil fuels produces 9.0 gigatons. The release of this, like this, the living things into the ocean, like producing this 92 gigatons, dissolving carbon dioxide and also releasing carbon dioxide as a cycle. And when they die, they sediment producing oil, but after millions of years, that's why petroleum comes from, as I said before, from some ex-living things or the fossils of living things which used to live into the sea. Like in here, for example, carbon in plants and animals, they produce this carbon dioxide, which is just been decomposed and then released again, and then they're going to be fossilized, creating this amazing coal, right? And stuff like that. So for you to pay attention to that part, if you think about, so all life, as you can see in that chart, all life is carbon-based, meaning that the carbon cycles between the atmosphere, carbon cycles between the atmosphere, and also between the biosphere, and also between the geosphere, and also the hydrosphere. So all of those, right? So photosynthesis and respiration are central to those transfers. Okay, think about that in the graphic I was showing you, so that the carbon is essential or is the essential element for life. That's why we talk about the carbohydrates and all of the substances that our living things contain. All of them are carbon-based. So it is unique in terms of carbon is unique. It has unique properties, and its unique properties allow it to form an almost infinite number of different molecules, right? So if you think about it, in living systems, the most important of those are carbohydrates, as I said before, a little bit of fats, and nucleic acids and proteins, right? So carbon in the atmosphere, as you're observing this moment on the screen, is found mainly as carbon dioxide, as I said before, the most important gases. So, and also methane, another one which we talked before. So in rocks, it is most commonly found as either coal, which is mostly carbon, right? Like coal, an example of this one could be like the Bosque Petrificado Puyango in Loja. If you think about it, that's basically carbon, that's a source for carbon. Or limestone, which is calcium carbonate. We're going to go to detail that. So the most important processes in the carbon cycle you're observing are photosynthesis and respiration. Both of them are chemical reactions. So photosynthesis is a chemical reaction which removes carbon from the atmosphere and converts it into organic molecules. So this organic carbon may eventually be returned to the atmosphere as CO2. through respiration, which is another chemical reaction, which is basically the oxidation of glucose. In our case, for example, whenever you eat any kind of nutrients you eat, all of those are going to pass to your arteries, and when they arrive to the cells, in the cells, it happens this amazing chemical reaction, which is respiration. In respiration, the cells absorb the oxygen and give out some carbon dioxide, right? So this oxidation produces some usable energy for the living thing, for our metabolism and stuff like that. So the activity of volcanoes also releases carbon dioxide, but it's just small volumes and stuff like that, also it releases. So carbon cycles at different rates depending on where it is. So on average, carbon remains in the atmosphere, so you can see there, as CO2 for about 5 years in organisms, in our organisms for about 10 years, like living things and stuff, and in oceans for about 400 years, as sort of dissolved there. So carbon can remain also into the rocks, like coal, as I said before, for millions of years. So in this next part, I want you to see like this. So for summarizing those ideas in terms of the living things, so some of the living things are going to die, then they decay, and because of some decomposers, and they transform everything, all of the living things, into carbon dioxide. The chemical reaction for respiration also produces carbon dioxide. When we inhale, who are exhaling carbon dioxide whenever the plants are feeding and stuff like that, with carbon dioxide. The photosynthesis, another chemical reaction, right, intakes carbon dioxide for the plants to try to recreate their own food from the nutrients they absorb from the soil, and also the composition from living things. So for the first one I wanted to pay attention, if we go to detail, is petroleum. Petroleum comes always from fossils, from living things, if you think about it. Living things are from the ocean. That's why we do not have petroleum in Quito. See what I mean? So if you take into consideration that the oil and natural gas we have, like in Ecuador, I would say, or in any part of the world, so it's going to be taken into consideration that oil and natural gas, because you have this more petroleum is found, natural gas is in the upper part. So oil and natural gas form when dead algae and zooplankton settled to the bottom of shallow seas and lakes. So that's why it used to be some marine, right? Like it used to be some sea living things. So these remains were buried and compressed under layers of non-porous sediments, as we studied before with the cycle of rocks. So oil and gas like coal are extracted by humans, as we do these days, for obtaining petroleum, for obtaining gasoline, and the rest of the derivatives and that. So, well, just in terms to mention that part for you to take into account there. So also the other one, this one is really interesting for talking about, because that one is basically the limestone. Limestone is a type of sedimentary rock containing mostly calcium carbonate. So it forms when the shells of the mollusks and other marine organisms with calcium carbonate, so that's basically it's 96% of calcium carbonate, all of the shells, skeletons, they become fossilized. So withering of exposed limestone releases carbon again, and so on, so on, so on, right? So, and for the next one, if you think about this one, oh, this one is one I like a lot, which is coal, purely coal. If you think about this, coal is formed of the remains of terrestrial plant materials buried in shallow swamps and subsequently compacted under sediments to form a hard black material. So coal properly. So coal is composed primarily of carbon, and it's widely used or fuel resource, like the one I told you from Bosque Petrificado de Puyango, and also the carbon sometimes we buy for making our barbecues or parrilladas and stuff like that. Okay, guys, if you paid attention to this specific instructions, you can watch this video again and take into consideration what we discussed. So remember that in the most important part for this, like the cycle for carbon and things like that, so take into consideration those values, because some questions are coming about this. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this part and things like that. So basically, that would make it.